If you have been hearing terms like Claude Code, AI agents, MCP, hooks, context, and honestly, it feels like everyone suddenly speaks a different language. You are not alone, because 1 year back, I was exactly where you are. I knew how to code, I knew how to build applications, but I had absolutely no idea how all of this fits together. Today, that's exactly what we are fixing it. By the end of this course, you will be able to build something like this: a real application, courses, the progress, the quizzes, your own dashboard, filtering, the searching, content, backend, everything working together. And the interesting part is, we are not building this after learning Claude, we are building this app while learning Claude, because that's how real developers learn. Now, quickly, if you are new to my channel, I am Jay. I work as a tech lead. I spend most of my day helping developers build software. And over the last year, I have been using AI tools almost every day. Some things work, some didn't. And what you are about to learn comes from both. Now, let's answer the biggest question. Who is this course actually for? If you have never touched Claude Code before, you are in the right place. If you have opened the Claude Code in past and immediately felt that, hey, it is too complicated, you are in the right place. If you have watched 5 tutorials and still don't understand what context is, hooks, MCP, or agents actually do, you are definitely in the right place. The only thing I expect is that you have written a little code before. Any language, any framework. If you have not written any code at all, then this course might be feel a little bit tough for you. Now let me show you where we are going. We will get Claude Code installed and working. No assumption, no skipped steps. We'll make sure everyone starts from the same place. Then we are going to build our developer learning hub application together from an empty folder to a working application. And while we are building, we will naturally introduce the concepts that actually matter. For example, we will understand how Claude internally works. Then we are going to touch base context, the thing most beginners underestimate, and honestly, the thing that probably has the biggest impact on Claude answers. CLAUDE.md, which is basically how you teach Claude about your project. Ones that we are going to utilize for the automation. A workflow runs, a file gets checked, and a command executes. Then we will touch base about the MCP. MCP, probably the most misunderstood topic, because once Claude can talk to GitHub, a browser, a database, or another tool, everything changes. Then we are going to move into the agents and multi-agent system. Instead of one Claude doing everything, you will have specialists. We will create a developer agent, a tester, a reviewer working together like a real software team. And by the end, you won't just know how to use Claude Code, you will understand how it behaves the way it does, why it succeeds, why it fails, and how to constantly get better results. One thing before we start, this course is not about pressing a button and letting AI magically build everything. That's not how good developers work. That's not how you will learn. Good developers know what to ask, when to ask, what context to provide, what tools to connect, and how to review the output. That's the skill we are building, not prompt memorization, not magical commands. Alright, enough talking. Let's get Claude Code installed and then we will start building. Alright, before we start building our application, we need Claude Code installed. I have already summarized the entire process on this screen, scattered between these 5 steps. So let's move through it pretty quickly. Most of you are probably not here for a long installation tutorial. You are here to learn Claude and build something. So let's get everything set up pretty quick and then we can jump right away into the project. But first, let's quickly verify that Node.js is installed on your machine. Open a terminal and run these 2 commands. You should see a version number. If it is not there, that means it is not installed on your machine. You simply go here, node.js.org, and you download from here. Now, once you have Node.js installed, you can move it to step 2. Pretty simple. Just use this command and you will be able to install the Claude Code. This usually takes less than a minute. Once installation is complete, you can check it like that. This will indicate that Claude is installed on your machine, and very first time all you have to do, just type Claude. Now what I will do, I'm actually going to use this demo mode. Okay, one thing I want to add, if you don't already have a Claude account, create one first. And depending on when you are watching this video, you might need to paid Claude plan to use Claude Code. So I'm not going to spend time on pricing because that changes over the time. I just wanted to mention it before we continue. One thing that confused me for the first time when I used Claude Code is the authentication step. So there are the two steps involved. You have to first go and create the Claude account. Once you have that on the terminal, once you are inside the Claude very first time, you might have to explicitly use your account to link. And once you will able to do that, it is going to ask this option. You use option 1 and then it is going to ask you to open this URL in browser, which you should copy it and put in the browser. Once your account is already created, it is going to link you and you click on authorize. It will give this authentication code. This is very important. You copy this code, you come back here and you paste it here and then hit enter. Now you can just, after the login successful, maybe you can just type hi and see if it is able to respond you. Pretty good. So now you are connected. Setup process is actually pretty straightforward. No complicated configuration, no API keys, no environment variable. Install it, sign it, verify it's working, and you are ready to go. At this point, Claude Code is installed. We are authenticated and we are ready for the fun part. Let's create our project and see what Claude can actually do. Alright, so Claude Code is installed. Now it's time to build something real. For this course, so we are going to build this Developer Learning Hub website. The features are going to be, we will have something like courses, lessons, categories, and from architecture point of view, pretty simple. We are going to have the UI web application. We will have a database, and web application is going to retrieve, store the information within the database, and user is going to interact with the web application. So let's jump into the Claude right away. And we are going to start with our first prompt, which we can use. Create a modern developer learning hub, features this and this. Before implementing anything, explain your architecture and technology choices. So let's copy this one and come into Claude, and I'm putting here and hit enter. So one thing, I would recommend, instead of immediately asking Claude to start coding, I want to see the plan first. And this is a habit I recommend for all of you getting into early. Before building something, ask Claude how it wants to approach the problem. So architecture and technology choices, React plus Void plus Tailwind CSS. This is fully client side, SPA, no backend, all looks. So I'm good with that. I just want to, change the tech stack just for fun. Okay. Now, one thing I want to add, right now, as a beginner, if you're watching this video, don't make a lot of fuss in terms of, the tech stack, because that is not what our objective is. Our objective is mainly to understand the workflow, how Claude works. Now, this is where the Claude Code feels very different from a normal chatbot. Notice what is happening. It's creating files. It's creating folders, installing dependencies, updating code, running commands, and checking results as well. So we are going to talk about how all of this works later, how Claude does all these things internally. For now, I simply want you to observe the workflow, how Claude works. Okay, so looks like our initial implementation is ready. Just a few minutes ago, this folder was completely empty. We had nothing here. Now we have the first version of our developer learning hub application. We have courses, we have the home page looking pretty nice. Browse all courses, you can go here, my progress, everything is looking now. Before we start adding features, I want to understand what Claude actually created. This is another habit that will help you a lot. Don't just ask Claude to generate the code, ask Claude to explain code. So let's use this prompt. One of my favorite uses of Claude is learning, not just generating. And let's see what it says. I mean, if you take a look here, right? I mean, on the top, it's explaining the description. It is explaining we have backend, which is the brain, C Sharp, ESP, .NET Core, front end, Angular, TypeScript, and then some details about it, details about the folders, right? So anybody, any new developer, if want to understand this project, this is more than enough. So now we have much better understanding of the project. We know where the main application lives, we know what backend does, what front end does, right? And we also know how Claude organized everything. So now, as a next step, let's improve this application. A learning platform usually has a, the continue learning section, something that helps users jump back into the course they were already taking it, right? So let's ask something. What is best way to add a continue learning section to the home page? I am not immediately asking Claude to build it. First, I want to see the approach. Let's see what Claude recommends. My recommendation, front end only first. You already have both API calls in API service, so you can build the whole section in this without touching the back end. So approach makes sense. Now let's build it. Now again, Claude is making the changes. So see here, let me check the models and course structure first. Okay, all right. So looks like continue is done. Let's take a look. I'm refreshing. Oh, pretty awesome. So now application is starting to feel much more realistic. So let's take a look one more time. We have featured courses, all these browse by categories. Then we have continue learning, Angular complete guide 40%, C Sharp beginners 25%. I mean, pretty nice. I mean, if you go in our dashboard, yeah, you can see two courses started. You are there 40%, 25%, and you can resume here. So at this point, I want you to notice something. The value of Claude Code is not just writing code, the value comes from the workflow. We gave Claude a goal, we asked for a plan, we reviewed the plan, we approved the implementation, we ran the application, we verified the result, and then we improved it. So there is much better way to work with Claude than simply throwing a huge prompt at it and hoping everything works. And honestly, this is much closer to how I use Claude on real projects on day-to-day basis. So at this point, we have a working developer learning hub. And more importantly, we have started learning how to collaborate with the Claude. But this raises an interesting question. What exactly is Claude doing behind the scene? How is it reading the files? How it is updating the files? How it is making changes to the projects? How it is running your application? How it is starting, the servers? And how does it feel now that it is much different from a normal chatbot? So let's talk about that next. Okay, so next few minutes we are going to talk about some of the very important concepts And I wanted to make sure that you please focus on this, because this is the foundational of Claude, how Claude works. So a few minutes ago, if you guys recall, we started with an empty folder. We give Claude a prompt. This is our prompt, create a modern developer learning hub. And somehow we ended up with an working application. Now let's spend a few minutes understanding what actually happened. Because if you are anything like me, the first time you see Claude working, it almost feels like magic, but it's not magic. It's actually a series of simple concepts working together. And once you understand these concepts, everything else in the Claude code becomes much easier to understand. Before we talk about the Claude, we need to quickly talk about terminal. Think of the terminal as a text-based control panel for your machine. Through the terminal, we can access file, we can run the programs, we can install software, right? For example, if I go in terminal here and I'm in that the project folder, and if I simply type dir, it is going to list down all the files. If I use mkdir, I will be able to create the folder. Now let's connect that idea to Claude Code. Earlier we watched Claude create files, right? I mean, if when we issued the commands, the Claude was able to create all these files. It created all these folders, right? It was able to run commands. It was able to build, the folders and generate this entire application. The reason Claude can do, because Claude has access to all these tools. If you see here, the files, terminal, browser, Git, all these tools, it has got access. Now let's understand this whole tool calling, okay, how it works. So what actually happens when you give Claude a request? Let's say we ask Claude to build a learning platform, okay, the way we did. Claude doesn't immediately start writing code. First, it understands the request here, okay. Then it thinks about what needs to be happen, what are the different steps it has to do. Then it chooses the right tool and it uses that tool, it reviews the result, okay, and then it decides what to do next, and that's called the tool calling, okay. And you watched it happen earlier while Claude was building our application. Now let's switch to here. There is another interesting thing Claude does, and that is called the agentic loop, okay. So Claude doesn't usually solve problem in a single step. Usually it works in cycles. It plans, okay. It plans, it acts, it observes, it adjusts until and unless it is not able to finish the entire task. So that is what it is called agentic loop. Now let's move it here and try to understand the permission model. Now just because Claude wants to do something doesn't mean it automatically can, okay. So Claude operates behind a permission model. So when Claude wants to read the file, edit the file, run commands, or perform certain actions, it may ask for your approval. So if you folks noticed it, when we were developing it, it asked many times, can you provide the access to go ahead, read this folder, etc., etc. So that is called the permission model. This is super important. This is up to you that when Claude asks permission, what you are going to allow and what you are going to deny. Now let's try to understand this last one, that if Claude is so powerful, why sometimes Claude or any other coding agents, why they fail. And there could be, a couple of reasons, right? Because nobody is perfect, neither the coding agent is perfect. Sometimes these agents fail. Sometimes results are not what we expected. Sometimes Claude get confused. And surprisingly, it's often not because the model is bad. The most common reasons are, the bad instructions, the missing context, wrong tool, and then it can be permission issues, okay. So it is very important that what the better inputs we are providing it. Now let's try to recap. We use the terminal to interact with our machine. Claude uses tools to get work done. Claude works through the tools calling, okay. Permission keeps us in control, and better context usually leads to better results. Now, what brings us to one of the most important concepts in Claude Code? Context. because the quality of the context you provide often determines the quality of the results you get. And that's exactly what we are going to talk next. What exactly is context? So, context is, in simple term, it's information. Information Cloud uses to give you a real answer instead of a guess. Simple formula. Question plus context is equal to better answer. In other words, the more better context you are going to provide to Claude, it is going to be that much efficient. Now let's understand with a real example. Now let's take a look this course page. Every course is having a category, right? So C# for beginners, programming language, Angular complete guide, web development, Docker and Kubernetes, DevOps, right? So let's try to create a bug and then we will understand the relevance of context. Okay. So let's come into backend. We have this course service.cs. If you see this line, okay, you have got here the course, every category is getting assigned by using this line of code. Okay, so I'm going to change the simple thing. I'm going to map it to a wrong the data value. Instead of category id, we are going to assign to course id. Now what, as you can guess, that after this code, what will happen, it is not going to correctly map with the category id. Now let's build the backend. So now the course category is gone. Let's have a prompt. Our course base is broken. Fix it. So this is the prompt which we have given. The thing is here that I am not providing the much context. Okay. It's going into front end course detail.component.ts. What actually I am trying to point it out here that we didn't give them much context, and that is why now it is scrambling around. It is going and it is trying to find out every damn files. Obviously the LLM is so strong and so capable that it was able to found the bug, but consider a enterprise level application which is having hundreds of files, right? So this small nuances makes a lot of difference when you are not providing enough context. Okay, so I'm going to stop this one. Now let's try to fix this bug by providing enough context and see how Claude behaves, right? So this time we are going to tell that on course page all the category are not showing up. Can you check in course service file? Now see right now what is going on and try to compare what you did last time. Now see, reading one file, it simply went into directly that one file and right away, see here. So do you see the difference between providing enough context versus not providing the proper context? Right away it went, and this is helpful because I mean this is going to save the time to the Claude. It is going to avoid the hallucination, and think about your token usage as well, because the more time Claude is spent considering and exploring other things, right, and guessing, it is going to increase your tokens. Okay, so we are going to say that run the app and let it fix, right? Let's come back here and let's understand the type of context. So context is not one thing, it is five things. It is every conversation which we are doing. So in this session, every prompt which you are entering, it goes into the context. So all the conversation it saves your files, it saves your project structure. So context is having all these details about all these files. It knows your project structure, it knows the front end, all the files it has got it, and then in addition of that, it also knows about your Claude.md file, which we are going to talk about in a few minutes. So Claude.md is a persistent project memory. Now what is this? So this is your preference and style. So if you come here and if you see here, you have this special .claude folder that is also part of the context. So we haven't gone in much detail here, but there are a lot of settings and your preferences goes inside this .cloud folder. So that is also part of your the context details. Now let's understand what is Claude.md file. Okay. So Claude.md file is actually a markdown file which lives in your project root. We haven't created the Claude.md file yet, and we are going to create just now. But this is like a project memory. Think about it like that: if somebody join your team who doesn't know anything about your project, and you give that instruction to that your team member so he can understand the project, right? The same thing goes in Claude.md file as well. So let's try to understand practically. Let's ask a quizzes feature in our application. We do not have quiz feature. Okay, so that is what we are going to add it. Okay, so I'm going to ask add a quizzes feature, same pattern as courses. So as of now, if you see here, it's been almost 42 seconds. It's still trying to explore your repository. It's trying to understand the pattern. Now let me read the key files to understand exact code patterns before writing anything. So now I'm going to take a pause here, and I'm going to show you that what happens if you already have a Claude.md file. Let's understand that. Now I'm going to create a Claude.md file. To let you know, this init command is initialization, and you use this prompt to create the Claude.md file. So we used init, and then we uses this one. Now let's open this one. Okay, and see what we have put it here. Pretty basic thing. So now Claude.md file has been created by using the init prompt. Now the same thing, now we will go back and we will use the same prompt which we used earlier. Okay, so let's clean this one. I'm going to clean this conversation, and exactly the same prompt now I'm going to use after providing the Claude.md file. This time it didn't have to guess. It already knows the rules which we already defined here. That's the whole point of Claude.md. The key thing is that you are not writing documentation for humans. You are writing a briefing Claude reads before it touches a single line. This time it already knows the rules, that what it has to do, and it is going to follow the rules which we have already provided it. Now till the time it is actually trying to build this whole quizzes feature. So let's understand what goes inside the Claude.md file. Keep it short. This is not to wiki. 5 things max. Project overview. What this app actually does. 1 or 2 lines. Okay. Tech stack. Backend, frontend, database. No paragraphs. Just the list. Things to avoid. What exactly you don't want in your projects. Like, don't touch the legacy, some service if you have already in your project. Let's say you are using some of old legacy concepts, some wiring, there are some limitation, and you do not want to modernize due to some reason, things like that. Anything which you want to avoid it. Conventions like naming patterns, folder structure, where logic lives, right? Anything which you are going to explain if any new team member joins it. The commands, how to build, run, test, right? All this that goes inside the Claude.md. Now few things I want to point it out, that sometimes the beginners actually does that. Claude.md is not documentation, it is a briefing. If it's like 3 page, 5 page, Claude is reading these 3 pages, and it is going to slow down your application, because every session when Claude runs, it reads this Claude.md file. So do not make it huge. Second thing, it doesn't mean that Claude.md file you are writing one time and then you are completely forgetting it. That's not how it works, right? So you have to keep updating your Claude.md file. Do clean coding. That Claude doesn't understand what is mean by clean coding. Okay. Mistake 4. No secrets in the file. Do not put credentials. Do not put API keys. This file gets read constantly and often committed to Git file in Git. So treat it like any other source file, any other artifacts. This is all about the Claude.md. Okay, so now we are going to understand how hooks works within the Claude. So let me explain in a simple way that let's say that we are going to add a dark mode capability on this application. We came into the VS Code and we asked Claude add a dark mode toggle. Claude is going to make changes everywhere, whether it's a UI or API, depending on what is your ask, right? Every time you ask Claude to do anything, for example, we are asking dark mode, then tomorrow you came back, you ask 3 other different functionalities. Each time Claude making changes, you have to run the application, you have to build the code, right? Whether it's a UI or API, you have to run your test cases, you have to make sure that your linting is good, right? Whole cycle has to run again. You need to run the test, right? And make sure that everything is passed. Now imagine doing this 50 times a day. It gets old very quickly and you get frustrated. That is where the hooks come into the picture. So let me show you something. I'm going to ask Claude to create a hook. The rule is simple. Whenever Claude changes the code, you run your test automatically. Create a hook to run the test whenever code changes. Okay, in the meantime, we will come back here and we will try to understand what is required. This is how we create a hook. So you specify hooks and then you tell when exactly that hook has to be run. You have to specify after what tools it has to run. And then you specify here that what exactly command it has to execute. So simplify, this hook is indicating that whenever the write edit, means whenever there is any edit into the code, after that tool gets executed, which is this one, execute this hook and then run this command. So that is how hook works. It's kind of automation. And this is just one example, right? You can do a ton of different, the automation by using the hook concept. Now let's come back to VS Code and see if Claude has made changes. The Claude has done the setting. You have got hooks here. Push tool use, write edit, the way I explained here. And you have type command. It's indicating that run the PowerShell command. And then it is going to show the running test. And this is the command which it is going to execute it. So that's how you do the hook setup. So next time when we are going to make the change, we will test out this hook. Now let's move to the MCP, which is pretty exciting concept. Okay, so in the last module, we configured a hooks, and what it does, it run the test whenever Claude changes the code, and test run automatically. Super useful feature, right? We did that. But now we have a different problem altogether, right? Claude can work inside our project. Claude can read the files. Claude can edit the file. Claude can run the commands. But what if Claude needs to use something outside the project? This is where MCP comes in the picture. Whenever Claude needs to use something outside the project, you can utilize the MCP. For example, what if I want Claude to open my application in a browser and test like a tester and go ahead and check every, the pages, checking all the, the HTML controls like buttons, drop downs, every activity, and making sure that our UI is working as expected. What if you want to connect with the Git and you want to see all your issues, right? You want to see all your commits. What if you want to connect to the database, or APIs, or file system, which is not sitting on your system, but it is outside over the network, right? So that is where the MCP comes in the picture. Okay, so now let's take a look one real use case, how it works, right? So we are going to ask Claude to set up a MCP to test our application within the browser. Configure playwright MCP. and test the post page in browser and confirm the test result in quick time. Now take a look at the configuration. Okay. And now I want you folks to also take a look at the configuration. Okay. So the Claude has created a new JSON file. Let's quickly understand this because this is extremely important to understand how Claude configures a MCP. So normally, Claude creates this file called .mcp.json, and this is where your all MCP configuration sits in. Since we asked only one MCP to configure right now, so that is why you see only one entry. So the way it works, that it goes MCP servers, and then here line number 3, it tells that what MCP you are configuring. So here you have the playwright. Tomorrow, let's say you want to connect with the Confluence, a Jira, a GitHub, right? So you will have another entry for that MCP. Okay, so MCP configuration is done, and let's take a look at the result. Courses page is test result 11 by 11 pass. So if you see here, Claude was able to go and test it out by using the playwright MCP. Let's say another example. This project is on the GitHub Developer Learning Hub, and consider that these are the issues, GitHub issues we have. You wanted to see what are the different issues, you want to work on it, right? You want to understand it, you want to understand all the commits, you want to understand all the PRs which you have done, everything externally you will be able to configure through the MCP. So super powerful concept. Now let's move into the next another very exciting and powerful concept is agents. Okay, so this is very important concept, and I want you folks to focus a little bit and understand the concept. So far, in order to build this application, whatever we have built so far, what happened? What was the pattern, right? We went into the Claude terminal and we provided the prompt. Claude started working on it. Claude created all these folders, files, modified it, right? Claude's finally, they tested its own code, and then Claude tells that, hey, it is working. We went and we checked it, and there is no harm in it. But imagine that when you work on a real project in your office or anywhere, right? Do you think that there is one person is the only one who is doing coding, who is doing the testing, who is reviewing the code, and finally it is pushing on the production? No. In real life, it doesn't happen. You actually have a team, right? Somebody codes, then there is a tester team who tests your the code, then there would be some architecture team who reviews, who makes sure that your architecture is good, right? That's exactly the whole fundamental concept behind the multi-agent system, where actually you go and you create a team. Okay, so that's exactly what we are going to do right now. We are going to create 3 different agents. Okay, so we go here, agents, and you come here, click on new agent, and I am going to ask project level agent generate with the Claude developer kind of the responsibility. So we are creating one developer agent right now. So when you create a agent, it asks what are the different tools access you have to provide. For the time being, I'm providing everything. And let's use the model. Sonnet is fine. And we will do the blue. Yes, go ahead and save. So we got our developer agent. Let's create tester agent. Okay, we got this one as well. And let's create one the agent which is going to review the code finally. So if you take a look here, project level 3 agents have started showing up: code reviewer, feature developer, test writer, runner. Okay. Now let's come back here and we are going to ask to build the dark mode toggle. Implement the dark mode toggle using all 3 agents: developer, tester, and reviewer. Now take a look, guys. Now, in the meantime, till it is going to use, when agents gets created, it goes inside this .cloud folder and then it creates this agents. This is where you will see all your agents, and then you will also see their agent specific memory as well. The idea is that once you go, for example, let's take a look here, right? So this will have everything what we provided, that what is the responsibility of that agent, and any memory, the data which you want to use for that agent, that goes here. Now, if you take a look, it has already started those agents behind the scene. If you see here, and here you will see all these. If you take a look here, see, just write a runner, code reviewer, right? And so think about it, that right now all the 3 agents are working right now. The work is in progress. How they are working right now? So developer sub agent implements the toggle across all the files. Developer is done. Hands off to tester agent. Tester agent is going to pick it up and it is going to write tests for the new toggle, runs the full suite, reports pass. Now test is pass, hands off again, and then it is going to give you the reviewer agent, right? Reviewer goes last. Reviewer sub agent reads the difference, checks it against CLAUDE.md file, flags one issues. Just as a hypothetical example, request a small change, and there it is, right? So reviewer catches something. It's not because it is a smarter than developer, it is because that reviewer is not the one who has wrote this code, right? Different context, different job, the fresh eyes. Just like in a practical team, you have couple of people who are working together, right? So that's exactly the whole idea behind this multi-agent concept. So the work is done, dark mode complete, right? Now let's take a look. And here it is. Switch to light mode and you see our application is in light mode now, and you go and you click on the dark mode, it is going to show up in the dark mode. Fantastic, right? So all the 3 agents have been working together, and they had different eyes, right? Another thing I want to indicate, right, that each custom agents get their own context. So they have their own Claude.md file. All the context details which we talked about in previous section, that what makes the context, that entire context set, each agent will have their own. Okay, so this is also one of the benefit is. Now this is a wrap up, and let's try to summarize one more time, right? That what exactly we built it. This is where we started with empty terminal, with empty folder, no project, no Claude.md, no agents, nothing, right? And this is where we end up. A full-fledged dev hub site, right? We have all these courses, the real ones, C# for beginners. I mean, if you go and take a look, the Python for data science, Angular, ASP.NET Core, SQL, Docker, and Kubernetes. We have all these, the filters, the category filters, difficulty, short by. Then we implemented the dark mode. We implemented the progress tracking. We implemented the quizzes. It's like one full-fledged, the site. And let's walk through. And the interesting thing is that how we got there. So we actually started with installation, then, a terminal, then we went through and we understood how Claude works, right? We went behind the scenes, terminal basics, tool calling, the agentic loop, why agents fail sometime. Then the Claude.md file, we talked about the context. We covered the MCP. We utilized the playwright MCP to test out our application. Then we then we implemented the automation using the hooks. And then we also covered about the agents and multi-agent system. So if you followed along and built this yourself, you already know more about working with Claude than most people who have used Claude for months. Not because you read about it, because you did it. So hope, you like this episode. Thank you so much.